Welcome back, MTG Joe here, and today we're here for another installment of the weekly meta breakdown. If you're new to the channel and to this specific segment, what we do is on a weekly basis look at the top performing decks in each format on MTG Arena. So there's a separate video for Standard, Historic, and we'll take a look, maybe Alchemy if there's enough games played as well, just to see what are the top performing decks. As always, this data is coming from Untapped GG. It is a companion tool that runs alongside your Arena client, tracks your win rates, gives you deck suggestions in terms of your wildcard counts, and then kind of consolidates all the data into win rate matrices. It also has like in-game overlays to show you like what's left in your deck, how many percentages you have of drawing those cards. So it's a really useful tool. It's free to get started with it. So if you want to use it, the link is in the video description down below. If you click the link, it also lets them know that you came from here. So it helps out the channel for free. We're going to start off with Standard, and we're going to look at both best of 1 and best of 3. So this is for the week of February 26th to March 5th, Saturday to Saturday. Doing this a little bit earlier this weekend because I can't do it on the usual Sunday night. Platinum to Mythic rank, and we're looking at 130,000 game sample size. So the top performing deck is Mono White Aggro, and we've seen varied versions of this. You'll see some sideboard cards. Some people just are playing their best of 3 version in best of 1, and there's been some modifications to the list, I would say, since our last week. There's been some kind of number changes, stuff like that. So notably, there are up to 4 Wandering Emperors in the main board. Number of reasons. This card, first off, very, very good card. That's more than enough reason to play this card. Provides you card advantage, instant speed threat, insulates you against board wipes, can be used as a combat trick both to pump your creatures, creates tokens, as well as works as an exile removal. Exile being very relevant in this format when you have stuff like in the Runes deck or anything that comes back from the graveyard, anything like that. So kind of a new inclusion. I would play this a bit in my mono white deck, but I played it as a 2 of. This version is being played as a 4 of in this particular version. So we see our staples: Hopeful Initiate, Usher the Fallen, 4 of Intrepid Adversaries, Pump the Jams, Luminarch Aspirant 4 ofs, Thalia. Usually see between 3, most of the time it's 3 in the list, with runes becoming really popular, up to 4 of those, even though it's legendary. 3 drops, we're seeing Adeline, as well as Elite Spellbinder, and then Reidane. Notably, there's no copies of Brutal Cathar or Skyclave Apparition. So into the mirrors, you're probably a little softer because you don't have the real removal, but you're a lot more linear in running down. So more like, here are my answers, figure them out type deal. 1 of Legion Angel. This sideboard's a little weird just how it's imported. So if you are adding this, so as always, I post a bunch of the deck lists in the description, the video description, so you can import them from there. If you are importing this list, just be mindful of how it looks like it's been captured. Someone playing a best of 3 list, how it sorts the sideboards. You want to add 3 Legion Angels to the sideboard in this one. Finally, we have Valorous Stance. Can be used offensively to protect your creatures, defensively to destroy something as well. And then the last kind of inclusion in this deck, so we've typically seen 3 of Cave of the Frost Dragons and 2 Eiganjos, but they're actually playing 3 Crawling Barrens in addition. So kind of an ode back to the Faceless Haven days, although it's a colorless line. It's just giving you a lot of use of your mana if you kind of run out of gas. This deck does not really have any ways to draw cards, so your turns where you're flooding out, anything like that, you got creatures, keep getting bigger, stuff like that. Notably as well, Crawling Barrens does not get hit by Vanishing Burst, which is one of the more prevalent instant speed removal spells. So next up, from extreme aggro to slowing it down, Azorius Control, 62% win rate. And this version here, we're seeing sweeper package of Doomskar as well as 3 Farewells. I'm actually just going to pull it up like this so you can see the full card. With Farewell, notably Exile, quite relevant, even enchantment, stuff like that. Your main win conditions, and this is usually how I like to look at these control decks, what you need to play around. 3 Wandering Emperor. So we saw it being used in an aggressive deck. It's also being used in a controlling deck as a way to have some more instant speed removal, pressure your opponent, stuff like that. So you're winning either with Wandering Emperor, 1 Hullbreaker Horror, technically these tokens, but likely not. This is more just a stabilize card. Gain you some life, give you some blockers. Those 4 cards, and then there should be 2 Hall of the Storm Giants, and then 1 of Cave of the Frost Dragon. The rest of the deck, technically Emeria's Call is also a win condition of your lands. It's interesting. I think going up the numbers of the March of the Otherworldly is not wrong. It's very good against auras, just being like an exile style effect, so maybe 2 of these. We see counter spells in Saw It Coming, Syncopate, Jwari, Negate, kind of scattered in there. We see removal with Fateful Absence paired, draw package of Behold the Multiverse, Revitalize, Life in a Card, as well as Memory Deluge. Next up, Naya Humans. So this list has been around pretty much every week. It's always been towards the top. It's basically mono white splash red green. You're getting a copy of Minsk just as 2 creatures in 1. You're playing 4 of Halana and Elena as a way to pump up your team, give everything haste, and then Sigarda for card advantage and an Anthem. And then you got some copies of the Valorous Stance in there. For the decks that we've seen a couple of weeks in a row, we're not going to go too much into it. Next up, Esper Control, 62% win rate. Sorry. So I actually played this deck a little, and it's effective, and it's kicked my ass before on the ladder. I found it boring to play, so I just didn't finish through with the video, but it's the kill everything, bore your opponent to death deck. So similar package as the blue-white control deck. So really the difference is we're playing 1 Kaido Suzuki for some draw kind of advantage. You have your Hull Breakers, 2 of in there, but you're getting access to Vanishing Verse. Again, let me just move this here. Vanishing Verse to exile, so more efficient targeted removal. You also get March of the Wretched Sorrow as a way to deal damage. So more cleaner answers in the deck. You're basically diluting your mana base in this deck. So where in the other deck you had 3 creature lands and Field of Ruin, sorry. This one you only have the 1 of creature land. You are a little bit threat heavier though. Overall, like, it might have just been the games I played. I wasn't too much of a fan of it, but in any case, this is a sweet deck that I'm going to revisit. So I played a while ago these Omni Cult Anvil decks, and there's a few ways that you can see them being built, but basically it's like a Rakdos Sacrifice shell. And the card that like kind of stood out to me in this deck, Invoke Despair. If you've been following my content, I've been playing this in like Historic, Standard, Alchemy. I really like this card. It's just, it does so much. And like when you compare it to some of the other invokes, like look at this invoke, which like drains your opponent 6, draws you 3 cards potentially. And then you look at the blue invoke, which is like gain control of an artifact. Untap it. It's just kind of night and day. But basically you have cheap creatures that can generate you treasure tokens. So Shambling Ghast, artifacts. Shambling Ghast, this makes blood, and then you could sack it with the Omni Cult Anvil to give you tokens each turn. 4 of Meat Hook in the deck. Then you got some flashback ability with Bloodthirsty Adversary. You have a Graveyard Trespasser, some Soul Transfers. I don't think I love the... well, mind you, with this deck, because you have the Deadly Disputes as well, so you're probably hitting these. I'd have to try out these like numbers. I never really liked this card. It's really just slow, I find. The games you're probably winning with the 3-4. You're probably ahead anyways. I'd probably play another Sorin over it, but without playing the deck, this is kind of where I see. But this deck looks sweet. Selesnya Enchantments. So there's kind of 2 builds going around with enchantments. There's this Selesnya version that's looking to play... this one's kind of a hybrid. So there's kind of 3 now. So there's the Runeforge Champion build. There's the Naya one with all the haste creatures that you kind of play with Showdown of the Scalds. That one I'm doing really good in Alchemy. I'm 26-4 with the deck. This version here is kind of a mix between the 2. And there's the Hallowed Haunting version, which makes a bunch of tokens. But basically the core of this deck is Generous Visitor pumps up your creatures whenever you cast an enchantment. The combination of Jukai Naturalist reducing the cost of your enchantments by 1, And then Runeforge Champion, making all your runes cost 1 colorless, means your runes cost for free. So then you basically 0 mana, get the whatever buff of the rune, and draw a card for free. And then what you're trying to do is basically give something to trample. You have Mashikos that can pump up your squad really big, gain a bunch of life, and then in this version here you have Wedding Announcements and Circle Confinements. And then pairing up the deck, you have Spirited Companion, Kami of Transcience, as well as Catilda. I kind of like the Naya version better because you have the ability to get haste with the red rune. And Showdown of the Skalds is another way to pump up your team. In Alchemy, in one game against Blue-White Control, I was able to survive against 2 Divine Purge, 2 Fateful Absence, and a Farewell, exiling my board, with no creatures on board and just like mana, Runeforge, Jukai, and then I somehow chained together 27 damage. It was like insane. So I killed them out of nowhere with it. So you get a lot more explosive draws. We see another version of Mono White Aggro here. This one is kind of the weenie version. This one could run folks down faster, but you're much more susceptible to a board weight. And this one's a lot weaker to Meat Hook Massacre. Just another Naya, another Azorius. So their first iteration of the Orzhov decks. And these have varied in capacity. Like, there's different versions of this, but the core of the deck is you got your Wedding Announcements, you got your Meat Hooks, you got some combination numbers of Vanishing Verse and Rite of Oblivion. This version is a little bit more mid-rangey with Restoration of Eiganjo. Most of the updated versions are playing Wandering Emperor, again, just very useful card. And then this one's kind of got the Learn package. Most of them moved off of Edgar just because there's a lot more exile floating around. This is like what I was saying with the other enchantment version. You have Hallowed Haunting. The Weaver of Harmony doubles ETB effect, or doubles triggered abilities of artifacts. So this one's a little bit more interactive, but slower of a version of the deck. Orzhov mid-range, this is kind of more of a creature heavier version, so less kind of grind value and more just like efficient creatures like your Luminarch Aspirant, stuff like that. You have your Tybalt, so you're splashing red, and then a smattering of removal. We see Gruul Modify, Gruul mid-range. So this version of the deck is looking to take advantage of Thundering Reiju. The Reiju itself allows you to deal damage and put counters on things equal to the number of modified creatures you have. This particular version, we played a version with Ornreef Hydra. This version here looks to kind of be a Jaspera Sentinel, Magda ramp package with your gold spans, Halana. So it's kind of this one's more Gruul mid-range than Modify, I would say. We're also seeing new cards in Goro Goro, as well as Kami's Flare that can kill a creature and kind of pump or deal damage to its permanent as well. Mono Red Goblins deck we usually see in like the platinum ranks, doesn't do as well, but it's a very cheap budget deck to get started. The deck's only 4 rares, everything else is common, so if you just want like a quick ladder deck, this is one to look at. Mono Blue Tempo, this lets you basically it's long day. This is a deck that's kind of been dropping. It showed up last week close to 60%, but you're using like your Aspirant Spirit, Delver, and then these kind of spirits. So Spectral Sailor or Spectral Adversary can phase things out. So as a tempo play, the Dream Shackle Geist can keep things tapped down. The March of Swirling Mist also phases out, similar case. So you kind of mix up your opponent's attackers. Then you have tempo plays in Fading Hope. You have counters in Spell Pierce, Essence Capture, Jwari, Geist Snare, which with your Spirit package, which you have 12 of, can cost 1 mana, so just like another Spell Pierce. Thrills are just for some virtual card advantage. And I think I said this like last week too. You're probably just better off playing 1 to 2 copies of Hall of the Storm Giant. If you flood, you have a creature land. It's free value. Selesnya Humans, kind of the mono white version, but you're splashing Catilda. That gives you all your creatures tap 4 mana. Hamlet Vanguard can be a 3 mana 5/5 in this deck. Torrens lets you create a bunch of tokens, and then Sigarda kind of pairing everything together with an Anthem effect. Another enchantments, mono black control. This is just like an invoke displayer. Blood on the Snow deck. Boros artifacts. This deck's actually really fun. So basically, combination of Ingenious Smith at the Find You artifacts, and then you have the Patchwork Automaton. They both get bigger whenever you cast artifacts. So what you do is you cast like Rabbit Battery to give things haste. Reinforced Ronin can keep triggering every turn. You have the Iron Apprentice that you could redistribute tokens on. The version I was playing wasn't playing Hotshot mechanic. I just cut 2 of these, play a 3rd Angel Fire and a 3rd Maul of the Skyclaves. Both give you evasion for your big creatures. But overall, it's a really fun deck to play. Just seeing quickly if there's anything really interesting. Mono green being really low and Hinata is actually interesting. Yeah, now we're kind of in the dumpster bracket. So that's best of 1. Like I said, I'll post the deck list that you can grab. And then standard best of 3, same time frame, 26th to the 5th, 24,000 games. This can be up to 3. Sorry, this is 24 matches, so it could be up to 3 times this amount of games. So 72,000 games potentially, between like somewhere in that range. We see Mono White Aggro. This is basically the best 3 version of the deck we saw there, so dominating best of 1 and best of 3. We see those Legion Angels hanging out here, but same deck that we just mentioned. We see Boros Modified. This is a... so I tried this deck out, and I found it worse in best of 1 at least, compared to the Mono White. You're basically just Mono White diluting your mana base, making it worse. But you're basically playing this to get haste out of the Rabbit Batteries. You get 1 of Shatterskull Smashing, and then you get Kumana Faces Coxswain. The thing is, you're a Thalia deck, so I found Thalia sometimes taxes this incorrectly. Now, the games where you get to lead on Kumana and then play Thalia on 2 is really good, because then you get a 2-mana 3/2 first striker. And then really your only play is in the sideboard. You're getting access to the Showdown of the Skulls, which is some nice card advantage. Otherwise, you have like Den of the Bugbear as a cheaper creature land. Just 1 mana makes a difference at times. But in this deck here, like, you have to play Snarls over the Sundown Canyons because you need white on 1 untapped, but then you're playing Snarls, which are awful. So I just found like the mana was a little awkward. See Orzhov Control coming in next. Kind of a mid-rangier version. Again, you have Concealing Curtains, which can block early and then eat away at your opponent's hand. Silverquill Silencer as a card that can also... this card rewards you for knowing the meta, naming cards. So generally you want to name like things that can remove it or key cards to the archetype. So against like Mono White, like if you look at their deck, generally against Mono White, I name Brutal Cathar. But knowing that like we're seeing these versions now without maining it, at least in best of 1 they usually still do, despite what we're seeing. I was playing a deck with it today. Naming Brutal Cathar is usually like kind of the answer. They've moved away from Skyclave. Or against enchantments, if they go Jukai on 2, you name Runeforge on 3 and kind of take that angle of attack. Naya Runes, this is the deck that I think is arguably the best deck in the format, at least depending on how Mono White shapes up. But combination, like I said, Generous Visitor, Runeforge Champion, Jukai, and then your Kamis. Commune gets you card advantage, and then you have like your showdowns to refill your hand. Runes of Speed to give haste, Pump and Trample, Lifelink, and then the Hallowed Haunting is kind of an alt win con. One thing to note playing this deck, if you cast your Runeforge Champion, try as much as possible to search your graveyard for a rune. So if there's the rune you want in the graveyard, take the one from your graveyard. The reason for that is because you want to naturally draw into more enchantment. So you don't want to dilute your deck by drawing into like lands, stuff like that. You want to just keep that gas up. And kind of the cool tech that you're seeing is Brilliant Restoration in the sideboard. You get to return all enchantments from your graveyard to the battlefield. So against the removal heavy decks, you play this card. Although 7 mana, the games are generally going to go long. And you're able to just kind of return all those spells back in kind of a mass reanimation kind of deck style, which is a really sweet kind of innovation. I see Naya Aggro, kind of similar to the best of one version. We're seeing an AO as a way of top-end card advantage. Think of it as a delayed collected company. I see Gruul modified. So this is the version I played. So you're playing Ornreef Ooze to kind of put counters. This card actually works really well in the deck, the Shatter Skull Charger. You get counters on things. And then you have Haste with Invigorating Hot Spring, Kumana, and then kind of just the like Uprising Renegade, stuff like that. Another copy of Naya of Ruins. You're seeing slight variations with Mashiko. Esper Midrange, kind of a Planeswalker heavy version. You got Saito, Malvin Hermit's main, some counters, and then a bunch of removal. So it's kind of the core like black-white deck, splashier variation and preference. And that's kind of it. The Jeskai combo. This is the... I think this deck's doing poorly in terms of win rate because it's difficult to navigate, but you basically cast a bunch of spells with Lier, targeting your gold span as much as possible, get you tokens, and then you cast Show of Confidence, put a bunch of counters on it, and kill your opponent. It's probably a harder deck to play. That's why you see the lower win rate on it. So that's it for the week. Let me know what you think as always. If you do enjoy the content, if you can, drop a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so for the channel already. And let me know what you're playing in Standard, what you've liked the most. And yeah, we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.